The Bourne and Zone of Appeals, November the 30th. The quorum been present. If you could review the minutes, please, from October the 26th regular meeting.
Make a motion, we accept the minutes as presented.
We have a motion to accept the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's approved. On to new business. Number one is appeal the decision of the Codes Enforcement Office regarding the designation of the facility located at 1501 Newview Street has been a waste disposal facility, property zoned I1, property owned by Andrew Welzek, applicant Royce Matthews. Mr. Green.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Codes received some complaints of trash and recycling at 1501 Newview Street. It's summarized in your all's report there. It's kind of a lengthy summary, but it kind of explains the situation pretty well, I think. That property is zoned I1, and also one of the complaints that we received, I received by email. I spoke with one of the property owners over there, and they requested that I include that in your all's report as well, and that should be in your all's report. When I looked at this, I had conferred with our city attorney. One of the things that we looked at was recycling isn't specifically listed in our zoning ordinance. However, it is a waste disposal is a permitted use, or I'm sorry, it's only allowed by special exception in the I3 zone. And one of the things we had talked about there was, we agreed that it's the closest permitted use that's in the zoning ordinance that applies. One of the other things that probably needs to be noted is we also have uses not otherwise listed in the Laverne zoning ordinance as a special exception in the I2 zone. And that's one thing that we had looked at with the quarry ordinance that we had also added. So that's one of the things that if for some reason it's not waste disposal, then it would be either or. One of the things that would have been done in speaking with codes, we looked at this, and a cease and desist order had been sent to the business owner by codes, and basically because it's not allowed in I1 under any circumstance, and the business owner is appealing that decision. We've got the zoning and the aerial photography here. It's the I1 zone, the corner of Newview and Dick Buchanan. That's the building that the operation is taking place in. There's some photos here. And the property owner on this side was one of the complainants too. We'd received several complaints from him, and they're saying that there was glass and things that were on the property line, which our municipal codes inspector went out, and I think he had since cleaned a lot of that up. However, there was still some that looked like it was on the ground, but I think he cleaned a lot of that up. Here's a view from behind the property. There's some dumpsters in the back here. You see there's some excess stuff there, but it's really undetermined whether or not that's from him or the prior business owner, but there is some trash there, some debris that probably needs to be addressed. And essentially that's it. It's just recycling and or waste disposal is not a permitted use in the I1 zone.
Is an applicant representative here? Would like to stand at the podium and raise your right hand and be sworn in.
Yes, sir. Do you swear or promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Sure do.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
George Dean, I'm an attorney from Nashville, 204th Avenue North, Nashville, Tennessee. I'm here this evening, may it please the members of the board, on behalf of Mr. Mathis, who operates the facility. Kind of listen, I didn't have a chance to talk to the staff before I came down, so I was interested in how they were approaching the matter, and I understand that maybe they've gotten some advice from Mr. Cope. Let me approach it from our angle. The first thing to recognize is that, from what I can tell, looking at the ordinance, there is no provision for recycling in the city of Laverne. The definition that's being used right now is out of the code, and actually, it's not defined. It's just in fact, a lot of the uses aren't defined within the city of Laverne code, and the actual use that they're talking about is something called, it's this page 103 of the zoning ordinance, waste disposal by incineration or compaction. And the thing to think, it's number 9 at the top of that page 103. And the thing to think about there is that my client is not disposing of waste. He's recycling. So this definition, this use category that the staff is trying to put him into, just does not apply to what he does. He is not, there's no disposal of waste material. What he's doing is bringing in recyclables, putting them together, and then shipping them back out in an altered form. Cardboard, plastic, some material, some metal, things like that. It's not waste material, which is what this is talking about, waste disposal. And while you're right there, if you're looking at that page at 103, look at the kinds of things that are permitted in an I-3. Radioactive materials, waste handling. Explosives manufacturing, number 10. 11, hazardous waste transfer or storage. 13, correctional facilities, alcohol and drug rehab. On the previous page, 102, chemical storage of products treated with potentially hazardous chemicals. Number 5 on 102 is petroleum refining and related industries. My point here is that I-3 is talking about a very difficult kind of use. That's not what's going on in this facility. It is a recycling facility, and actually is perfect for an I-1 light industrial district. In Nashville, probably they'll let it in some of the lighter commercial areas, as a matter of fact. If you take a look at what is permitted in I-1, and the listing begins on page 96 and then flows across over to 97. Read the definition of the description of the I-1 district. Designed for a wide range of industrial and related uses, which conform to a high level of performance standards. Industrial establishments of this type operate within completely enclosed buildings, provide a buffer between commercial districts and other industrial uses which involve more objectionable influence. New residential development is excluded from this kind of environment and ensures the reservation of adequate areas for industrial development. The actual uses include furniture and fixtures manufacturing, textile mill product manufacturing, printing and publishing, always a bad place to be if you're involved in, at least the old style. If you're doing new computer publishing, it may not be so bad, but the old stuff, it uses chemicals that are pretty egregious. Nothing like that is going on in this facility. Number 5, fabricated metal products manufacturing, stone, clay, and glass products manufacturing, all types of manufacturing activities which are much more egregious than this particular use. Let me suggest to you that number 9, a permitted use under I-1 on page 97, all types of wholesale trade. Well, in the absence of a better description, that's what I think it fits into within this zoning ordinance. It's a permitted use within the I-1. It's wholesale. He's bringing in these items by bulk. He's shipping them back out by bulk. There's nothing that's closer, because as I say, the description of waste disposal does not fit at all. This is not waste. These are recyclable materials, totally different from getting rid of waste by incineration, burning it. We're not doing anything like that. So with all due respect, the idea of trying to shuffle this into waste disposal by incineration or compaction, it just doesn't fit. And surely that probably does need to be in an I3 district, because if you look at the I3 uses, radioactive materials, explosives manufacturing, hazardous waste transfer, yeah, that's bad stuff. And if you have a true incinerator where you're burning waste, then probably that does need to be an I3, but that's not what we're doing. We're not disposing of waste in any manner. We're bringing in recyclables, repackaging, and then sending them back out again. And while there's nothing in the ordinance that is really all that close, the major thing I bring to this is just to remind the board, you may have heard this before, I know Mr. Cope knows it, the Tennessee Supreme Court, time after time after time, has said that when you're construing, this isn't a variance case. I know you guys have probably seen a lot of variance cases. This is, all we're doing here is asking the board to look at the definitions of the uses under the terms of the zoning ordinance. So the kind of paraphernalia that come with a variance, the unusual physical features, we're not talking about any of that. The Supreme Court, when they look at these interpretation cases and zoning issues, has a description that I always like to quote, and of course I'm not going to find it right now. Where'd it go? Well, just tell it to you. The basic idea is this, that you don't read the zoning ordinance favorable to the city. When you're reading a zoning ordinance where the construction is debatable, you have to, as a matter of Tennessee state law, construe it favorably to the property owner. Because the reason for that is because the zoning ordinance itself is in what the court calls derogation of the common law. That is, if we didn't have a zoning ordinance, we could all use our property for whatever we want. Since the city has written the zoning ordinance, if it's ambiguous or difficult to construe, the Supreme Court says you've got to construe it favorably to the property owner. And in this case, if you construe it favorably to the property owner, waste disposal doesn't fit because we're not disposing of wastes. We're recycling materials. They're coming in, they're going back out. Secondly, in the absence of a better description, the wholesale trade under I-1 is the best way to approach the use of the property. There are a number of other things that might fit as well. Under, say, some of the commercial districts, in the I-1, virtually all of the commercial uses in the city of Laverne are permitted by special exception in the I-1 zoning district. But frankly, it just seemed to me, looking at it today, really trying to get a handle on, where are we on this thing, is to say the wholesale trade under, I think it's section 9 of the provision. The other thing to think about here too, and another burden kind of that comes out of this, is with no real category for it. There's another important Supreme Court case decided 10 or 15 years ago, Robertson County versus BFI. The Supreme Court said in that case, and this involved actually a landfill case, that the county, the governmental unit, had to make room for all kinds of uses and required the county to find room for that particular landfill. Well, here we've got the city of Laverne with really no category for recycling. And again, it seems to me that the board should carefully consider, take a look at these definitions. And again, I use the word definition, it's really the land use categories. There are no definitions there. You've just got to apply common sense language. And to the extent that there's no particular designation for recycling, it comes dangerously close, it seems to me, to be a problem under the Robertson County versus BFI case. That's why it seems to me that ultimately what the board should look at is the section number 9, all types of wholesale trade. Again, what he's doing is wholesale. Large quantities of materials come in, large quantities of materials go out. The way the zoning ordinance reads is all types of wholesale trade. There's no limit to it. Whereas when you talk about waste disposal, just a common sense impression, without a definition in the zoning ordinance, means waste materials. And the vast majority of what he does on the property does not involve burning waste or compacting waste. What he's doing is processing recyclables. They're going to go back into the stream of commerce in this state or whatever other state, wherever the materials get sold. So ultimately, from our perspective, the use here should be a permitted use under the I-1 zoning district under number 9, all types of wholesale trade. And again, when you look at it from the standpoint of the Supreme Court case, it's a case called Edwards versus Allen, out of Robertson County, by the way, just a few years ago, Tennessee Supreme Court. Zoning laws are in derogation to the common law and operate to deprive a property owner of a use of land that would otherwise be lawful. Therefore, such laws are to be strictly construed in favor of the property owner. The way you read the ordinance has to be in favor of the property owner. Now, that's not, if it's clear what it is, that's not a problem. But where there's some construction of the ordinance, some interpretation of the ordinance that has to happen, such as here, because, again, waste disposal doesn't fit. There is no waste disposal going on. This is recycling. Given that, the board should construe the other provisions of the ordinance favorable to my client. And again, there are a number of different categories that may fit, but the one that stands out to me, just because it's so broad, is number 9, all types of wholesale trade, because certainly that is what he's doing. He fits that definition, that categorization, much better than waste disposal, because certainly he is involved in a type of wholesale trade, whereas he is not involved in waste disposal in any manner whatsoever. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I
Appreciate that. Any questions or comments from the board?
I have several. Number one, I'm the one that saw the mounds. What you're seeing up here on these pictures are nothing. These, I don't know where the pictures went, but it was mounds. I'm talking about mounds as high, almost as the ceiling, of
Out in the
pure
parking lot?
filth. On this property, if you'll go back, Brent, where that semi was, right in here, where that semi, all of that right in there was covered in glass, plastic. It was so much filth, and it was pouring onto the other property owner's property, all down the fence line. It was all in the fence line, and the stench was so bad that, I mean, it was a pure sour smell. And it was mounds and mounds and mounds of this. So, you know, where you get wholesale trade on trash is beyond me, because, I mean, it was horrible. And we had several different witnesses. We obtained our pictures. Where it had rained, whatever was in these had run onto the other property owner's property. I mean, it was filth. That's all you can say for it. That next to it is residential. I don't know how this got zoned to be an I-1. That was not this board, but right next to it is residential property. All the rest of that street is residential. They've been there for years and years and years. So, in essence, what they're wanting to do is pile this trash upon these residents. And I mean, I don't know when those pictures were taken. Was it prior to this facility going in there?
No, this was actually just a week or two ago. I think they've cleaned a lot of it up, but from what I understand, like you're saying.
But the storage was on the outside. And like I said, it wasn't just small mounds, it was huge mounds of glass, trash, and it did have liquids. The smell, like I said, was atrocious. And it's right there in residential property. I do believe in our newest ordinance, when we did the I-3 zoning, we did go into the I-3s where we did allow on things that could come up that we had no control over, would be allowed in the I-3 zones. I'm not against, certainly green. I love the thought of recycling. But this type of business, it is an I-1 zone. There's plenty of other uses for this property, so we're not limiting anybody the use of their property. We've certainly given a wide range here. Unfortunately, it's just not the use that your client wishes to promote in an industrial. And sir, I assure you, Mr. Dean, I appreciate very much everything that you've said, but I assure you, you would not live next to this pile. And
Well,
there's residents
and
that are living there.
Yeah, and I do think my client probably didn't understand he should keep everything inside, and that was a mistake. He's tried to go back and clean it all up. From the way you describe it, it sounds like he's done a pretty good job of doing that. The whole idea behind this, I think, would be to keep it all inside anyway, even in the I-1 district. I think that's the way the city contemplated it happening. And again, most likely my client didn't understand that until the complaints came, and he and I have talked, and he's tried to put everything back inside the building. Obviously, he's not quite 100% there, but he's much better than what he was. And I'd emphasize that that's really an enforcement issue, not that, you know, if the board happened to rule in our favor, my client's going to toe the line. But what you're talking about could be, let's say that it was a waste incinerator that falls within the rules on a conditional use permit or site special exception. You can operate any facility in a way that's not good. And obviously at the time that you're talking about, he was not aware of keeping stuff inside, and he's tried to change that and done a pretty good job of it. My only point is that enforcement issue is separate from trying to decide what it is under the terms of the ordinance itself. Enforcement problems are always with us. A determination of what the actual use is needs to be made first. And again, I assure you that my client is going to toe the line and understands now that he needs to keep the materials inside the building and not outside.
Any other questions? Board comments?
I've got one. I'd like to, in reading the granting of a variance here, I've got 3 things here that sort of stand out as per our definition that's given to us, signed by the applicant.
I'm sorry, this isn't a variance, though. We're not asking for a variance.
Okay,
At least I hope we aren't.
That's correct. It's an appeal. It's
appeal from the
Codes officer's decision.
Codes
So
officer's decision, okay.
So your decision today would be to affirm the decision of the codes officer in terms of what he categorized the use to be, or take a different stance in terms of what you think the use is.
And I apologize, I may have misled you when I started talking about a variance, because I was just trying to distinguish that. We're not here about a variance. I apologize.
One other thing, Mr. Green, how long has it been there? How long has this business been here?
6 to 8 months. Since July.
Of 2010.
Yes, sir.
May I also say the day we were out there, it was in early October. There was no, they had no permits at that particular time. So they were operating without permits.
So then would it be true that your client started the business not knowing or understanding the rules?
Yes, sir. That's part of the problem here. If he'd come in and gotten the permit, probably he would have been informed of some of the things, guidelines that he needed to obey, and that was part of the difficulty.
At the same time, I appreciate your comment on regarding number 9. However, what this board is here to do is to interpret the present rules and regulations that we have. We're not here to defer from that. We're here to understand both sides of the story, but adhere to our present rules and regulations. And make sure the board understands that is we're going by what's in front of us, make an interpretation of that. Any other questions from the board? Do we have anything else to talk about this? Anyone like to speak from the public? Any concerns? If you would stand at the podium, state your name and raise your right hand to be sworn in, please.
My name's Mac Nolan.
Do you swear or promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Will you please state your address for the record, please?
I'm Mac Nolan. I'm the Solid Waste Director for Rutherford County. My office is at 1220 West College Street in Murfreesboro.
Thank you, sir.
A lot of the commodity, not trash, the commodity you see at that facility came from the Rutherford County Convenience Centers. Rutherford County Convenience Centers, there's 14 of them scattered out throughout the county. One of them here in the city of Laverne is the trash provider for the county. We have separate containers. We have trash compactors, we have open tops, and we have recycle containers. Those containers that are recycled containers are what we've hauled over there for the plastic, glass, tin, and aluminum. Paper products go to another facility here in Laverne. Since we've had to move the glass from there, we're hauling the glass to Franklin. Everything else that we recycle within the county is recycled within the county. So I'm asking you to help us, your residents, facilitate a place here locally for us to dispose of our commodity. Our trash goes to Middle Point. Now, what you're calling trash over there in that pile of stuff Ms. Mosley is talking about was glass, came out of the glass containers. As you know, getting residents to do the proper thing is almost an impossible task. So, you know, the resident that's sitting there on a Saturday afternoon watching a ball game drinking his beer puts his empty beer bottles back into the container. That cardboard container wound up in the glass along with it. Sometimes the plastic bag that it came from the store is in with it. All those are still recycled commodities. I'm just asking y'all to help the residents of the county to where we don't have to start taking this stuff out of county again.
Any questions or comments? Appreciate it, thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak on this? Please stand forward and raise your right hand and state your name and address, please, for the record.
Do you swear or promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Darrell Webb. My address is next door. I'm at 1507 New View in Laverne.
Thank you, sir.
What I'd like to speak about is just real clear, the way I describe this is we know we've got Cardboard and More as the company name. Began about August, I would guess sometime in August they fired up and started doing business there. Up until that point, it's my understanding we didn't have a business license, no site plan, no facility inspection or anything was done to the facility. The way I see it, one of the big problems is the product shipped into this facility, it's not clean recyclable materials. We're not talking about phone books or nice clean copy paper or something like that. It's kind of like if you've ever gone to a restaurant, you know, and there's a roach in your food, you don't really talk about the food, you talk about the roach. Well, what I've got here, this waste also contains a lot of putrefied food waste. That's what it smells like, that's what it is, especially in the summer. What this does, it attracts vermin of all types, mice, rats. The neighbors have even complained about possums coming out of here. The building is often left unsecured. It's just whatever happens is whatever happens. Waste also escape this property, which is a big point of contention for myself. They escape it through the wind. They escape it through stormwater, just washing it straight off the parking lots onto the other people's property. And some of it's even tracked out from vehicle traffic. I just basically sum it up as saying this property and this business is not being maintained to the standards expected of a good neighbor. So I won't review the zoning or anything like that. I've tried to voice my concerns a number of different ways. I've had a lot of help here, Alderman and everything else, but what I would like to say about this business here is that it has not been constructed, operated, maintained, or closed in such a manner as to minimize 1, propagation, harborage, or attraction of flies, rodents, and other disease vectors. That's exactly what myself and my neighbors are complaining about. The potential for explosions or uncontrolled fires. There is a huge potential for uncontrolled fires on this property. The potential for releases of solid waste or solid waste constituents to the environment except in a manner authorized by state and local air pollution control, water pollution control, and or waste management agencies. When I'm picking this stuff off my property, seeing it tracked down the street, and the entire neighborhood can smell it, well, that is a release. The potential for harm to the public through unauthorized or uncontrolled access. Again, we're talking about helping out of convenience centers and everything, but I think if you see the way they're constructed and managed, they're very clean. They've got a nice surface, they're controlled, they're picked up every day, their stuff just not dumped in piles and just left for kids and children and rats to run through. Wind dispersal at solid waste is adequately controlled, including the daily collection and proper disposal of windblown litter and other loose, unconfined solid waste. This whole property is a mess. It's just a mess and an eyesore. And all liquids which either drain from solid waste or created by wash down of equipment at the facility. They either go to a wastewater treatment facility permitted to receive those or other methods approved by the commissioner. Again, I didn't just make that stuff up. That's what's required when you start doing a convenience center or one of these solid waste handling facilities. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but again, there are definitions. Again, what do you call solid waste? It means garbage, trash, refuse, abandoned material, so on and so forth. There's an old saying, you know, if something looks like something, smells like something, tastes like something, that's what it is. From my point of view, that's what we've got here. It's not the clean plastics like we're coming in nice little, you know, clean water bottles or something like that. This is household garbage. True, a lot of the materials are recycled materials. If they were clean and handled correctly, that'd be great, but that's not what's being done here. There's all kind of trash and other food waste and everything else. Whatever goes in those containers, there's some portion of it that's brought onto my property. It's brought on the neighbor's property, and it's allowed to escape through various means. For one, I and my neighbors do not appreciate all the glass on the road. There's a trail of glass all the way off the property. When this stuff is just dumped in the parking lot and vehicles run forward and through it, it's all up and down the place. I would think you don't have to have someone to tell someone the obvious. Hey, you're dumping huge piles of broken glass and it's just going wherever it goes. I'd ask the question, okay, when all this glass escapes and it's all in my yard, does anyone come over with, I'll run the weed eater, the lawnmower? If you let your kids run loose in the yard, will I ever be able to walk through that yard? And what would you do with it? How do you get rid of this glass? How do you clean it up? I have no idea, other than put it up for sale. My property becomes a buffer strip or a parking lot or something like that. I have no way of picking up all that glass. Tennessee Code Annotated 55-8-170, putting glass, nails, or other substances on highway prohibited. I won't read the whole thing, but there's already laws. That's nothing new against there. Everybody worked at this place and has ever driven past it, they've seen it. You drive down the road on a sunny day and it's like a rhinestones just all over the place. That's glass. Who's going to pick that stuff up and where's it going to go? Again, I've got sorry, don't have pictures, but this is what we're looking at. Huge open tops dumpsters, and to me, okay, it's not there today, but will it be there next week? Or will we have to go through a whole nother rounds of pointing out the obvious? Hey, you're dumping this stuff everywhere. Also, here's what I'm looking at from my property line. The whole side of the wall has been knocked away from the use of a skid loader in the building. So I'm sitting there trying to clean up my yard and I'm seeing trash roll down the hill and the whole wall sitting there swaying as they run inside the building. Trash just stays there, of course, until we get close to a hearing, and then we go pick it up. What's it going to look like next week if this is allowed to continue? I have no doubt it'll just be my problem to go pick up trash on a daily basis. The building, again, going over there trying to find out if there's someone there. There was nobody there on the weekend. The whole place is wide open. Huge mountains of plastic, and I'm talking to the ceiling up in here. Oily residue, trash, just stuff all over the floor, which drains out of the building, out the back lot, down the hill, which is me. No fire extinguisher, no sprinkler alarms, no nothing. The place just looks like it would be an inferno waiting to take out the entire neighborhood. I believe you would have to evacuate the whole neighborhood if that place ever went up. There'd be no way to contain it unless you were there in 5 seconds. Again, not only is that a fire hazard, but what's to stop all the rats, the dogs, the cats, from everything else from just going through all this stuff? Nothing. Other issues, and this might not be the right medium, but again, a buffer strip. I don't have a buffer strip between my property and this property. There was one at one time, but we keep pushing stuff, pushing it, taking out the buffer strip, just coming right to the property line, so it makes all this trash and everything easier to come over onto my place. Again, there's open top dumpsters. Okay, they're not on the side of the building, but from my yard it's easy enough to see, okay, now we put open top dumpsters in the back of the building. The whole property, all the property over our slope, so everything washes off all this garbage and comes straight down the hill. Again, it's my understanding, nothing's allowed to escape your property. I can walk you down my property line and say, this is from this business, this is from this business, this is from this business. It's a continuing problem. I'm told that if my property gets contaminated, I'm going to be liable for cleaning it up. Okay, if this business is no longer there in 6 months and my place is contaminated, who's going to foot the bill for fixing this, knowing that it was going on over a long period of time? Again, the property is not maintained to the standards expected of a good neighbor. whether the buffer strip is required to be 50 feet, 10 feet, whatever. It's not there, it's being removed, it's being used basically for an on-site landfill. Just keep cleaning off the parking lot by scooping stuff up, pushing it to the edge, and just letting it fill up the space in between there. And it's certainly no maintenance has been done. And this is what I look at from my neighbor. I've got mattresses, just trash, garbage, just everything. The only landscape buffer is just whatever happens to grow there wild, poison ivy, a few cedar trees, just whatever. And it's certainly nothing that's acceptable to the neighborhood. Again, looks like an Aaron Brockovich movie or something. Do I not have reason to be concerned when I see chemical drums just disposed outdoors and just left there? All kind of other waste, which again is just being allowed to just accumulate and build up and slowly, you know, just fill in the area. Again, the whole, all kind of chemicals draining off this property. Can I prove who did it or when? No, I can't. Should anybody done it? No, they shouldn't have. That's the whole problem. Big loaders, big, huge articulated loaders. Okay, can I prove that that oil running out from under it came from that machine who operated it? No, I can't. But the whole property should be maintained, and it's not being maintained. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, okay, do you want to be downstream from that right there? I mean, here we are on Percy Priest Lake, and we're just doing nothing but putting trash into it. Again, you can, it's hard to see there. But basically, I'm to the left of them in this picture. They're to the right. There's supposed to be a buffer strip in between these two. Buffer strip, there's a big building there. Who knows when that big building got put there? Now there's a parking lot. And now these other businesses in the back, well, we're cleaning it off with loaders or whatever, and we're just scooping up, some stuff goes down the hill, and we just keep expanding the parking lot. Well, that's great for cleaning up the parking lot, but the parking lot is not supposed to extend all the way to my backyard. Working with the Rutherford County Property Assessor, again, I'm not good at this stuff. All I know is that they tell me there's one building of record. Well, obviously there's two buildings there right now. This whole parking lot and everything extended over to, it's right there. There's my neighbor right there. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. What would I ask for? I would ask that this, we deny the current, whatever we're calling this, if it's not an appeal or an action, that we deny that this is allowed to continue. We require the property to be cleaned up in 90 days. I would ask that the property owner is required to put in a buffer within 6 months, something, and that we prohibit this from going on in the future by renting or leasing businesses without some type of site plan done, a business license approved, which I think would be common sense, due to a history of environmentally potentially damaging actions and allowing fire hazards to resist in a residential neighborhood. Again, my neighbors have talked to me. There's been past legal action required to get something done for things that were smoking up. They said we'd wait until dark, start burning things. It'd choke out the whole neighborhood from burning x-ray films. One building has been burned down. I understand there's been a death on the property from a building burning down or something like that years past. I don't know all the details. But basically, this is my property where I live in Murfreesboro. I grow a big garden on it. That's real nice. Can I do that in Laverne on this property? Not a chance. I'd never let anybody eat anything going off of it. Again, I've started work on my place. I'm cleaning this place up. The neighbors tell me I'm doing a good job. It looks real good. This is straight off Laverne website where we go out and clean up the lake, the shore, and everything every year, and everybody says, what a great job. I'm just asking we not mess it up in the first place so future generations have to clean it up. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak on this matter?
Yes, my name is James R. Mosley. I live at 149 Greenwood Drive, Laverne.
Could I ask you just to raise your right hand to be sworn in?
Do you swear or promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, I saw the mess. I saw the pile of glass. Well, I just found out that a county truck dumped the pile of glass. And that makes me a little irate because I saw how it was dumped and spread. My next problem is that I find out that the county is dumping at a place that doesn't even have a business license. Now, shouldn't somebody be checking with the county mayor to find out what's going on here? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this matter?
Chris Farmer, 216 Heritage Circle East, Laverne.
Could you ask you to raise your right hand, please?
Do you swear or promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
I was out there when Cena was out there and seen this, and the glass was piled as high as the 18-wheeler and just about as long. It was running over on the other property owners. There was rats. It was smelled horrible. And like they said, I mean, maybe it's not household waste, but there is lots of household waste in there. And like the property owner next door said, where's it going? Is it just getting dumped on the ground? I mean, it's glass. It's getting dumped out of the truck. It's busted. So whatever's been sitting in there fermenting, rotting, it's just running onto his property. There's spots that grass doesn't even grow on his property anymore. From maybe not from this facility, but from some facility. And you can see where it does run down the ditch into his property. And like he said, kids could just be coming up right into those piles of glass. And there were several neighborhood kids around that we seen that day. So I just wanted to confirm what they were saying.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak on this matter? Mr. Dean, do you mind stepping back to the podium, please? I have a question to ask.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the report that was put forward by the staff, but I'd like to ask the question, Ordinance 2010-06. The quote is, uses otherwise not listed within the Laverne zoning ordinance. It was added a special exception within I2 zoning. Just want to get your comment or your thoughts on it.
I heard the staff talk about that. This is a difficult area of Tennessee land use planning law. One of the things that I always teach is that you should also always, if you got a special exception, you should always have standards for the special exception. Now, I'm not sure that you have many within the zoning ordinance in any event, but this one, it's not possible to have a set of standards for a special exception like that. So while I can understand why the effort was made, I'm not sure whether it really accomplishes a whole lot, because to me, really, what ultimately happens is that that's probably what the lawyers call ultra vires enabling legislation of the state of Tennessee. That is, it's probably not something that the board can deal with. I know that the local legislative body intended for that to be, but it should be, when you're dealing with those special exceptions, it should be much more specific. So, the board thought that we fit into that. That's fine, and we'd be glad to come back maybe and put on a case for a conditional use special exception. The problem is I wouldn't know how to tell my client what standards, objective standards to meet. The thing down in Murfreesboro, the mosque, the religious entity there had a list of requirements to meet. Very specific, very objective. You put those on and you're permitted. Same thing should be true with a conditional use / special exception. And again, here I don't think, unless I'm wrong, and the staff can correct me if I am, but I don't think you've got that here, because if you have a general overarching catch-all, then it's impossible, it seems to me, to have a set of criteria, because you don't really know what the criteria should be addressing before you know what. For example, if you've got a daycare, you know the kinds of things that you would want to have from a land use planning perspective for the daycare. You might have a requirement that there be no driveway that requires someone to back up. You're going to make sure you're going to have continuous radius around so that you don't have to back up. You might have some kinds of buffers between the daycare and other residential uses, things like that. So that when you know the specific use, you can write in objective criteria that put the applicant on notice of what they're supposed to meet in order to get the permit. With a catch-all category like that, it's very difficult to do, other than very broad general restrictions, and those the courts have always struck down. So while I understand what the idea was, I'm not too sure whether it's very helpful, unfortunately.
Okay, appreciate it, thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak on this matter? Any comments or questions from the board? With that, I'd just like to guide the board here that we are, the motion is to appeal the decision of the codes enforcer, and it's one way or the other, that's what we're looking at. So with that, we've had a good discussion this evening. I'd like to accept the motion one way or the other, please.
I will make the motion to uphold the decision by our codes enforcer. I want to make a motion to uphold their decision in denying this property.
Okay, so I have a motion
Did I say that?
to uphold.
Motion to, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, everyone understand the motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 2, access variance for a 2-space access point for proposed development at 120 Glendale Drive, property zone C2, property owned by Edward Gore Jr. Mr. Green.
Yes, sir. This is a variance request to allow 2 access points for under 100 foot of road frontage for this lot. This is a small lot. It's zone C2. If you look, we looked at this. It's not. There's not enough room for the parking lot if there's only one entrance due to having to have 2 12-foot drives to go one way, to go both ways. Basically, this is. What he's having to do here is to put in a one-way drive to go through here, to go in and out. And in order to do that, they have to have the 2 access points. The one thing that's I think that should be noted, especially here, is there is 98.6 feet of road frontage here. So, it is a one-way in and a one-way out, and it's very it's very close to meeting that requirement. It's just shy of it.
The board? Anyone on this board would like to speak about this matter? For or against? Anyone like to talk about it? With that, I'll take a motion to accept or deny an access variance for 2 access points for the proposed development at 120 Glendale Drive.
I make a motion that the variance is granted for an access, 2 access points.
A motion to accept the variance. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Any other business brought forward this board? With that, we'll call the meeting adjourned.